I will go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. It is Allyson from FAIRsharing. I have used, FAIRsharing, which was once BioSharing, for a long time. And I love the fact that it was something that I could try to promote my database and my data and to show what's available. And it's really grown into something amazing. And they actually have done a brand new kind of overhaul. So this is a great time for Allyson to tell us more about FAIRsharing. So Allyson is the content and community coordinator, and will show us really what FAIRsharing has to offer for all of us. And then how really, one thing I would like to talk about and discuss later is how we as databases and FAIRsharing can really coordinate together to promote really sharing fair data throughout the whole world. So with that, I give the floor to Allyson.
Thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction, and what a beautiful introduction to FAIRsharing. I am going to do exactly what she said and just tell you about how FAIRsharing can help you and promote your resource and advertise and help you discover and find other resources that you could collaborate with or share data with. So I am the content and community coordinator at FAIRsharing, which means that I work directly with you guys, and I also work on curation with the curation team. My background is in biology and in ontologies and semantics, and I am really looking forward to sharing the common features that AgBioData Network has together with FAIRsharing, because I watched the seminar that you guys gave at the beginning of September, and I found quite a few interesting slides. So spoiler alert, you might see some of your slides reproduced as an outline for my talk today. I want to talk to you first about the scope of FAIRsharing and what our mission is and how we can help each other. And this is where I give you the first slide that you'll recognize from the beginning of September. Thank you, Ava, for providing the slide about the RCN, because it gave me some interesting ideas about how to structure the talk for you today. Now, this slide really speaks to me about communication and about how the RCN is all about making data easier to find and making it available over the longer term. And that really ties neatly into what FAIRsharing is all about. And we are here to inform and educate the whole research community about the available standards, repositories, and data policies that are there for you to use and for you to discover. So not only do we have records in FAIRsharing that describe these policies, standards, and repositories, but we have relationships that you can build among them to describe the collaborations and the way that you implement all these other resources. And it really creates a network, a sort of interlinked ecosystem of resources across your research domain. And we have a lot of resources in FAIRsharing. We have thousands of them, mainly repositories and data standards, but also a significant number of policies. The gray line at the bottom that you'll see on that slide, it just refers to our collections of records. So these aren't standards or repositories or policies themselves. They're just convenient groupings that organizations, communities, funders, and other stakeholders use to provide a nice window on FAIRsharing specific to them. And you guys at AgBioData have a lovely collection of your own that I will show you later on for those who aren't familiar. We have a number of stakeholders in FAIRsharing, and they can broadly be grouped into consumers or producers of FAIRsharing. Though, of course, many of you today, and also those in the wider community, sometimes have aspects of both of these at the same time. FAIRsharing consumers are those who visit us to discover resources. FAIRsharing producers are those who come to us to create records in FAIRsharing, to describe their databases, to describe their data standards. And we have people from researchers to journal publishers to societies like yours and data stewards and trainers and database developers. And when they come to us, they have these sorts of questions. So in terms of a researcher, they might come to us and ask, well, I have a funder and they have a data policy. And they recommend this whole group of standards, but how do I know which one of these actually apply to crop data? Or in the example on the bottom right with the librarian and data managers, they might be finding an archive of data from their university or their organization, and it's in an odd format that they can tell on FAIRsharing has been deprecated. But what do they do next? How do they make it available to be more accessible and reusable? So before I talk about how we as a registry have made our registry fair, that comes at the end of the talk, I want to just give you a little heads up about how we can help you guys increase your fairness. So to start with, we have findability. So we want to help your stakeholders find you. And we can do that through standard search facets. We can do it through simple or advanced searching. We can traverse the lovely network graph of your collaborations, and people can click through on network graphs and find you through a sort of a graphical interface. In terms of accessibility, well, we can help increase your accessibility by making you more visible. They can see your resource metadata that you provide to us. We can also store information on your programmatic accessibility. So things like web services, protocols, and people or programs can access your FAIRsharing record and find entry points to your data. Interoperability. Well, the information you provide us can help you advertise your work. And you can navigate through these relationships I've been telling you about to help focus and get all of these all of your community to utilize and traverse the landscape of your standards and your databases. Finally, reusability. Well, you can provide license information about your resource with FAIRsharing, and people can search. They can say, I would really like to see all the databases that allow data entry and it's CC0 or it's CC BY, or I need to have open data because that's what my funders require. So what I'm looking at next then, after I've given you an idea of the scope of FAIRsharing, is just to give you a little peek into FAIRsharing records. Now, this is an example using TAIR, because I know TAIR is one of the member databases in the AgBioData collection. We have lots and lots of metadata fields in FAIRsharing, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. What we've done is we've provided all those fields that our community wants, but that doesn't mean that they're all required. So each community has its own view of what's important to them. And when you create or update a FAIRsharing record, you can choose how you do that. You can see in this screenshot of the TAIR record that we get descriptive information, homepage, all of the standard stuff, keywords, the country that developed it, and a link out to that lovely relationship graph that I'll tell you more about later. You'll also see that a record that is stable and has a maintainer, I will show you a screenshot of that in a moment, gets a DOI. So that means that records are citable. I've done a little bit of a close-up of this record to show you what that DOI is. And this is a DOI to reference the FAIRsharing record itself, not the underlying resource, to allow you to tell collaborators where to find information and to give a permanent stable identifier to this metadata. We also have various other citation and history information available in the record, including a complete history log of changes. We like to advertise when somebody from your community, in this case, a TAIR curator, has created an account with us and is helping us maintain the record. The maintainers are awesome, and we love our user community, and they're really good at helping us keep things up to date. While we have a curation team in-house that aims to look at every record at least once a year, it's important that we encourage the collaboration with the community, because they're the ones that know their resource best. And here you can see a screenshot, not of TARE, but of the AgBioData collection, because I wanted to point out in the TARE case, they had one maintainer, but you can have as many maintainers as you need in a FAIRsharing record. And for AgBioData, there are two, including Darwin. And so in addition, if you have a personal account with FAIRsharing, as opposed to an institutional organization account, you can link your ORCID. Now, I talked about relationships. I'm going to go into detail about the graphs in just a few minutes, but I wanted to show you what the textual representation of those relationships looks like in a FAIRsharing record. So here are the TARE related databases, a screenshot of just a few of them. These are those databases that share data in some way with TARE. You also have a number of related standards that TARE implements. We also have at least six, we have 6 policies here, data policies that recommend the use of TARE, and one collection. That collection is AgBioData. Oh, was that Jackie Campbell? Thank you for pointing that out, not Darwin. Sorry, you're right, it said Campbell, didn't it? Ah, sorry, Jackie. Thank you for correcting me. I don't always look at the chat, but I'm really glad I did there. Now, evolution of resources. I have shown here what happens if you search for agriculture resources within FAIRsharing, but ask for a status, a life cycle status of deprecated. So we don't delete records when they, absolutely, thank you, Leonore. We definitely need unambiguous identifiers like ORCID, or I could have made a really big mistake, huh? And so we have a life cycle status in FAIRsharing. And what we can do with that is we can track what happens to a resource. And so you won't suddenly see anything disappearing from FAIRsharing. What you will see if we look at AgBase in particular is a message about why it was deprecated. In this case, there's an alternative, and you get a link to the FAIRsharing record of the resource that you can use in its place. A little more on those lifecycle statuses. We have a few others, ready, in development, uncertain, and deprecated. Now, in addition to this, you guys as maintainers of records on FAIRsharing can edit those values at any time. So if you need to switch between in development and ready, or if you're producing a new resource that supersedes an existing one, you can put that information in as well. All of the changes get checked by our curation team in-house. And the blue banner in the top of the screenshot there is telling you that there's been a change to this record, and that the curators will be looking at the record and making sure it fits within our curation style. And that moves me nicely on, not just to showing the record and giving you an idea of how we show the whole life cycle, but also a little bit more in depth into those relationships that I've been telling you about. And as part of that, I'm going to show you another screenshot of your lovely presentation from the beginning of September. I told you, you guys had an awesome presentation that I am shamelessly stealing. And this is for the Emerging Data Types Working Group. And I know that Suk was here today. I've seen her on the list. And this slide, to me, talks about the discovery of new data types. And FAIRsharing is really here to help you with things just like that. So let's take a look at a little closer look at the AgBioData collection, because what I want to do is give you an idea of what we can do with these relationships. So here we have a list of all 30 records that are in AgBioData. And here we have the graph, the relationship graph that is drawn based on that collection. So this shows the 30 members of the collection and all the relationships among them. There are many more relationships than this that are available by clicking on any of the nodes. You get a full expansion of those relationships, but the idea is to present you with something that's manageable. And in a first instance. So it shows you how your resource is related to the other resources within the AgBioData collection, and it allows traversal to other graphs, yes? Now, this, for me, tells me that there's a lot of collaboration between those at least in terms of standard sharing and database, maybe data sharing as well, if you look at sort of between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. But we might not have everything. So how can it be improved? Any connections that we've missed, and I bet there's a few of you there now that's looking at this screen saying, oh, I think there's more connections for those particular resources. You can just go and claim your record, become a maintainer, and add those relationships yourself. Are there any two groups that aren't shown properly here that share a common standard? You can see there's the FASTA standard there that's linked to a number of different records. If you click on any node, in this case, I've clicked on the TARE node, which is just sitting at about 5 p.m., but about halfway up towards the center, then you can get the graph for that particular record. So this is the TARE graph. It shows the standards TARE implements, the repositories it has a relationship with, and the policies that recommend it. And if you hover over any aspect of any graph, you get a highlighted area that shows particularly those relationships between TARE and the node that you've highlighted, in this case, Plantium. I wanted to show you another relationship graph. This is a policy one. I showed you in the TARE graph how a number of policies implement TARE, or recommend TARE, pardon me. And if we look at one of those policies, you can see the graph suddenly becomes a lot more dense. And there's still those connections among all of the resources which are recommended by the PLOS recommended data repositories, but you can see there's a lot more information there. Now, on to a few examples. So what I want to do is show you how you guys, as both consumers and producers, because I expect there are people from both stakeholder side out there, how you can really use FAIRsharing and how you can benefit from it. And here we are with the metadata working group slide. And what I got from this was that there's a real interest in increasing the use of existing standards as opposed to the emerging working group, which is focusing on new standards. And traversal of the graph can not only discover new records in FAIRsharing and new standards that we have described, but it can also help you find and discover resources that you may not have been aware of that are related to your community through the graph. So let's take a look at a few ways you can find existing standards. Well, I've put the AgBioData collection here because that is one way in which organizations can provide tailored views of FAIRsharing to their community to help them promote and educate within their community. And I've also put GBIF there because I thought that was a nice selection of organizations that have worked with us to create a nice collection for their community. But that's not the only way. It's not just organizations. Researchers can also create collections as a sort of live graph to complement any textual material. Now, here as an example, I have the collection that is related directly to one of the ISO standards. And this contains over 230 standards in the ISO document. And it's hard to read a giant list of 230 standards. And so to complement that, we created the collection. Now, even this is a little bit of a hairball for those who have worked with network graphs before, or even ontologies or RDF graphs. You'll know that this is starting to get to the edge of what's easily understandable. But remember, you can manipulate this graph and you can drill down and highlight sections of the graph and traverse it and find new areas. So what you get is so much more than the textual material that it is related to. You get statuses of all of these resources, whether they're deprecated, because this document could be live for years, and by the time you come to it, there might be some resources that are no longer working, and it saves you a lot of effort to be able to go to a live collection like this. Additionally, we can help you through our services. So a growing number of FAIR enabling services already use the FAIRsharing API. They use it to look up and select different standards in repositories. It helps them with FAIR assessment. There are a variety of data management tools that are making use of FAIRsharing. And we also have a new in development data discovery service, which is part of the Elixir-driven EOSC Life and by COVID projects. So this new service will enable metadata harvesting by allowing us to query and search and register repositories access methodology. So I told you before that we can store metadata on how your resource can provide programmatic access, and this data discovery service will really promote and advertise that. So then we're on to FAIR in practice. This is a section where I'm going to talk a little bit about our implementation itself of our registry, and also about our collaborations in the wider research community. And as part of that, I want to bring in the implementation working group that Jacqueline was talking about in September. And what's here for me is that I really picked up was how you guys want to publish recommendations for publishers and for journals to support and encourage fair data compliance, data management, and things like this. And I really hope that through showing our implementation and through showing some of our collaborations that we have with journals and publishers, that this might help in that regard. So first of all, policy records within FAIRsharing are mainly contributed by funders and journal publishers. And you can see a number of the journal publishers in this slide who have contributed policies to FAIRsharing. So these publishers list standards and repositories that they recommend as a sort of live version, as I spoke before when I was discussing the ISO standard, a live version of their instructions for authors. And it allows their authors to know what resources might be best for them and discover them, but also it allows the policymakers themselves to discover new resources. So they can explore the network graph. They can look and see whether a standard or database they recommend has become deprecated, and they can have a look and see what they should be doing instead. I showed a slide very similar to this at the beginning of my talk, which was about how FAIRsharing could help increase your fairness. And I thought it was only fair, I'm using that word too much today, to show you how we make ourselves more fair. And so rather than listing every single thing here, which you can see for yourself on this particular slide, I'll just say that we have increased our fairness by adhering to a variety of common standards for interoperability and findability. And we have chosen a license which allows people to use all of our data. I also wanted, as part of the collaboration part of this section, to give you a summary of our user community, our adopters, our working groups that we're a member of. So we are involved heavily in the RDA working groups, and we are also, through our stakeholders, really engaged in the community that we're trying to advertise and promote. The final nearly section I want to show you is about how we can help you. And I'm going to show the recruitment working group slide because I feel here there's a lot in this slide about broadening participation in the AgBioData network and about increasing and promoting AgBioData itself. And so this is how FAIRsharing can help you do that. You guys are the experts. You know, our curation team is our jacks of all trade, yes? But you guys are the experts, and having you guys maintain your records with us and visiting us once or twice a year and just making sure everything's up to date is a big help for us. You know more about your key features. You know about all the relationships and collaborations you have with other resources, and you can best describe them. And when you become a maintainer with us, you become part of our community of curators. And we want to advertise you personally, as well as your resource generally. And so for that, we allow you to align your ORCID with your account. And we feature your account name prominently on all the records that you curate. We also have something coming up in the future that I have a slide about later, about giving you more attribution and getting you more involved. But your help and your descriptions really help inform user decisions. So our users are your users. And so people who come to us want to find you. And that's what we want to have happen as well. So anytime you can add metadata, anytime you can provide information on your certifications, on who recommends you, these are ways to really get you guys to become more visible. And I had to include this slide from Lisa because I loved it. It was one of the first slides in your presentation in September. It's one of the last slides in mine, but it really spoke to me. It's true, we have this great demand for fair data, yes, and we have an increase, a corresponding increase in data volume and complexity, but we don't always have, and I wish we did, a corresponding increase in curator time. And so I think just showing how valuable curators are in general, those in FAIRsharing and those that help us as part of our curation community and in the wider research community, is just, you're like gold dust, yes? And so as part of that, we are in the process of developing a community curation scheme, which will not just allow you to update and maintain those resources for which you are a key developer, but if you have a broad understanding of the resources in your research domain, for example, the AgBioData research domain, and you think you can help us in building and enriching these relationships or the metadata and the records, then we can have you help your community and FAIRsharing even more by becoming a curator who has access to records across a particular research domain and not just those that they're directly involved with. We would really like feedback on how you guys would like to be recognized for this work. We have a number of ideas, but we really want not only to engage our community curators, but also attribute them and find some way of showing how thankful we are for all their help. Of course, you get on-the-job curation expertise. You get engagement and networking within the community of curators. You become an expert on the standards in your area. These are all good things, but we also want to advertise you as well as your resource. So finally, outreach, and I'm going to just include the education working group here because that's the question. They want to answer the question of what's out there. How can we tell our community what is out there? How can we provide a curriculum that helps them learn about FAIR and how to enable FAIR data? And I think this is really an awesome working group for the purpose. And I hope that my next few slides will showcase some of the ways in which we might be able to help. So first of all, we have FAIR Assist. This is the next big project in FAIRsharing now that we've got our new beta site up. And this is the educational component of FAIRsharing, where we'll explain and guide our stakeholders to help them make the best use of the functionalities and content within FAIRsharing. Those stakeholders are both consumers and producers. Anyone who comes to FAIRsharing can use FAIR Assist. And it's going to have two broad components. One is a visual story with infographics to educate people and provide targeted advice. And the other is a wizard that is layers of a decision tree that will increase in complexity over time and provide the users with the ability to answer questions and filter and select based on their requirements. I also noticed in the educational working group, you were talking about FAIR curriculum. Now, FAIRsharing is involved collaboratively with this Terms for FAIR Skills ontology. And you can see the data model of the ontology here, which I won't go into detail, but for which the URL is available at the bottom of the page. And what Terms for FAIR Skills does is to provide a framework for describing the competency, skills, and knowledge associated with making and keeping data fair. So you can curate training materials and registries that have these training materials to help guide the people, like a data steward, towards a presentation or something similar that might help them gain the skills they need. Finally, I just wanted to briefly mention the FAIR Cookbook. This is another project that we're involved with, although Susanna, who's here more than me, and Philippe as well, Philippe Rockeser, and in the overall Oxford group. And the FAIR Cookbook is this fantastic resource that provides recipes that cover the operational steps of FAIR data management. And this is aimed in the life sciences, but there's a lot of overlap in AgBioData and your network with the life sciences. And these recipes are designed to help you learn how to keep your data fair and how to make it fair. And it's for anyone who needs practical assistance in the FAIRification journey. It's been developed with a huge number of professionals in both academia and industry, and it really provides a valuable resource to which you can contribute yourself. So take a look at that and see if that might be of help to you. I'll finish just with a slide of all of our operational team on the top left and all of our advisory group in the rest of the slide. I don't expect you to memorize the names, but it's just a good place to finish by thanking the people that have been a part of this journey. And I also want to thank all of you listening and for inviting me here. Now, I love questions and talking more about fair sharing. So if you have any questions at all, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Allyson. That was great. So we will open up the floor for anybody that has questions for Allyson. So I have a question because I've actually been going through and the beta site and trying and update various things because it's been since you did the transition to the new beta site. I kind of been leaving it alone. So how long does it usually take? Like I made an edit and now it's waiting to be approved. How long does it usually take for that waiting period for something to be approved?
Well, I should say that our curators are in Europe,
Yes.
the ones that are in person curation teams. So bear in mind their working hours. But we do look home. We do look every day. We're that's part of our work is that we're always keeping an eye on the queue. So I'd expect them to be approved tomorrow. But just remember that your changes are visible even before we've approved them. So it's just really about double checking that what you've done is in line with our guidance and that there isn't like a broken link or something like that. So your changes are visible from as soon as you make the edits, but usually a day or two longer if we've got a few people on leave. Leonora has their sorry, Jacqueline, is that all right? Is that a good answer?
Yep, that's a great answer.
Perfect, thank you. Leonora has her hand up.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to dig into the site. So for a database that's deprecated, that has no, I think that may not have a person dealing with the record, how would we go about, so for the Airport project, that project is no longer funded. So components of that project moved to different places. So is there a way, do we just can I just email you and say, hey, there's like an issue with this resource, but I don't own the record, so I can't fix it?
Right. So there's two options for deprecated records. If you aren't a developer, send us an email. If you were a developer of the resource, so you do have a direct connection with it, you can still become a maintainer and update it, because sometimes you do need to update even deprecated records, to provide information, maybe update the description to provide some information. And you can provide a relationship that would link that to any new resources that might have some of the data from the original. And ultimately, once we've gotten started on the community curation project, if you, for example, were one of the agriculture, or agronomy community curators, then you would have the ability to go into those records directly and make those edits, even if you're not directly a maintainer. Although, of course, we want to make sure that you're attributed. So I suspect if you do that, we would probably list you as one of the maintainers.
It's kind of moot. Actually, it looks, I found the record and it looks like he fixed it. But never mind.
Oh, did we fix it? I don't remember all of them, I'm afraid. There's too many for me to memorize, but
Okay.
But that's what could happen. It's a good question. and so I hope that, after all of this, we can find some more resources that from your network that people can add to FAIRsharing, maybe even add to the collection that we might have missed. Yeah. How do I add a new database to FAIRsharing? So someone's asked that on the questions. Sorry, I missed it the first time. Thank you for resending it. So someone actually answered it in the chat, in fact. Thank you, Susanna. Susanna answered it for me. There's a link there to the page that helps you add new content. And so you just follow the add content. There's a button at the top right of the beta site that says add content, and then it takes you through a short description of why we add content and what sort of content we should add. And then you just click the button at the bottom and you get started on making a new record. And yes. Thank you, Susanna. Yes, as I said, we do try to look at records at least once a year. Sometimes there was in the last few months, there was a bit of a delay with the migration to the new system, but we're all back up and running now. Does anyone else have they tried to find their resource and not found it, or have they had a sneaky look while I was talking and did find it, but we got something wrong? I'm not afraid of a little error that I need to fix.
Hi, Allyson. This is Laurel. I have a question. I'm sorry, was there another question?
No, I just saw one in the chat, but you go first and then I'll do that.
I was wondering if FAIRsharing has thought about doing any sort of ranking or, certifying different databases for how fair they are. There was a paper out a couple of years ago about the trust principles for databases. Yeah. And I was wondering if you have any initiatives in that area.
I like that question because we need to think about what repositories want of us in terms of what metadata they want in FAIRsharing to help people find and make a decision about how fair a resource is. But FAIRsharing itself plans to remain agnostic and doesn't plan to provide any kind of certification that says FAIRsharing thinks you're awesome. Yes, because we feel that what we are is a service provider. So we've got a number of metadata fields in FAIRsharing that relate directly to the question you're asking. So things about whether the access is open or controlled, things about whether you can deposit data, anyone can deposit data or only some can, a whole variety of metadata fields that deal directly with assessing the fairness of a resource. But we won't do that assessment for you. However, there are lots of third-party tools that use our API that can use the metadata and help users assess their own resource. And there's also ways that you'll be able to search within FAIRsharing according to those attributes that you find most relevant to your community. I am in the process with a few other co-chairs in the RDA of working through creating a new working group of all about seeing what community consensus is around repository attributes. And this builds directly off the RDA FAIRsharing working group's work on repository criteria. And so I think that there's a lot of interest in the field and a lot of work happening in the field, and FAIRsharing will keep on top of what the community wants. It's sort of, for instance, what the core trust seal fields are. And then we can, rather than saying that we are going to ourselves have a FAIRsharing badge, we will simply present the information for our users to use in the way they see fit. Does that make sense?
That's great. Thank you.
And Susanna is so quick. Thank you. She has replied to Rashmi already. How do you decide if a database can be added or not, or indeed is worthy of being added? And so what I would say to that is we do have a few set of basic criteria. And if you look on, when you click on add content, there is a section about what we usually look for in a database. In general, it needs to have a way for people to access data. I know it sounds like a simple thing, but actually it's really important. We don't mind if your data is behind a login, for example, or if some of your data is public and other data you have to maybe behind a paywall, but you need to have a route to access the data. You can't just be a web page that advertises it. There's no way to get there. We also like the database to have information about its licensing. We also like the database to have documentation. And so while we don't require, if you're in FAIRsharing, that doesn't automatically mean you are fair or fair enabled. What it means is that you're a resource that people might wish to find in pursuit of their own verification. Yes. So we have some basic requirements which are listed in our documentation. And if you have any questions, do let us know and we can have a look over your resource for you. But we try to be reasonably inclusive. I'd say the most common misunderstanding that we have is when a researcher thinks that FAIRsharing is a place for them to deposit data, a bit like Dryad or something like that. Yes. So we need to gently let them know that it's not a place to store data sets, it's just a place to describe databases, and we're here to help you find a place to put those data sets. Thank you. Those are some good questions.
I just want to say that I love the word fairification, and I'm going to start using it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You can add it to whatever AgBioData bingo you might have at Christmas time.
There we go. Exactly.
Fairification's awesome. I don't remember when I first heard it, but I do try to use it because it's one of those words that just is fun to say as well.
I'm sorry to interject, but I just want to remind other people that are still on the call, please don't leave yet, because we have a working group announcement at the end of this talk. So I see the participant number going down. I'm just, don't leave yet, please. We have one more thing to mention. So,
I need to be more interesting with my answers.
no, it's usually people are like, oh, it's either lunchtime or I have another meeting in 15 minutes, but I'm just like, oh, but don't leave yet. We have important stuff. But any more questions? Oh, there's a couple more questions that just came up on the chat.
Is FAIR data free? FAIR data does not have to be free, as far as I can know. Susanna might be able to tell us more precisely the answer to this question. If it's findable and accessible, that accessibility might require registration. That registration might require a payment. For example, Core Trust Seal certification isn't free. So, it's an important distinction, an important question, and I think that's something. Yes, thank you, Susanna. She says I am correct. That makes me feel good. She says as open as possible and as close as necessary. A is accessible. It doesn't mean free. So that is the way of it. So FAIR has distinctly not made a particular statement on whether it's free or paid for.
Thank you for clarifying that. Because a lot of people think that FAIR data, if it has met the FAIR principle, that means it's free. So it's definitely not free. It's accessible, or you can find it, but it may have some parts of the data that are not accessible or withdrawn or something withheld. Yeah. Thank you.
And accessible can often mean something else in separate to pay or not pay. There's a database, an archaeology database that we have in FAIRsharing, and it's fantastic. And I know for a fact it's heavily used by the archaeology community because I've been told that by our collaborators. And yet you can't, it has a beautiful web page, but you can't do any searching or anything. You have to download the database and run it locally. And yet that's still a useful resource that a lot of people use. It's just not the way we expect things to be in the modern days of the interwebs. Yes.
All right. Well, I just want to thank Allyson again for coming. This has been great. I love seeing the new website. I mean, I'm just having so much fun going through and like, oh yes, this is awesome. Like, oh, I need to edit that collection for AgBioData because there's a whole bunch more I need to add.
Well, this is one I saw 30 and I thought, gosh, you guys, I'm sure you can do more than that.
Oh yeah, there's more than that now.
Get in touch with me. Absolutely. Sure sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. It wasn't intentional. I just wanted to, speaking of your working groups, I wanted to say I deliberately included those slides because I wanted to show how much virtually every single working group can have a relationship with FAIRsharing. And so please do get in touch in your individual working groups if you want to do more with us.
That sounds great. I'm really looking forward to working with you more. So
Yay.
Yeah, I will give the floor to Lisa so she can talk about the working group updates, and then we'll go from there. So all yours, Lisa.
Okay, well, yeah, that was a lovely presentation. Thank you very much. And I just want to tell everybody that we are going to start working group signups this week. Woohoo! Maybe even today. So look for an email from AgBioData, and then there's in that email, there's going to be links to the sign up. We have a lot of different working groups. The ones with asterisks are the ones that you guys suggested. Thank you very much. If you don't know what each of them are, we have sort of a guide on the sign up sheet, so you can read what we're sort of thinking. But I want to say, why should you sign up? So we all have the same issue with FAIR data. All of us are dealing with a number of issues that are making this difficult for researchers and for database people. So again, if we work together, we can leverage our limited time, and these issues are never going to be solved unless we work on them and solve them. And at the conclusion of each working group, a white paper or micropublication will be published, and we will all help with that to disseminate the results and give the members of that working group credit for their work. So I think that that is some of the many reasons to sign up. Now, if you're not sure which working groups you want to sign up for, or you're just not sure, we are going to have a big meeting on December 1st at this normal time. And we're going to break into small groups so that we can discuss the working groups and the community needs. And I just want to remind everybody that the working groups themselves, the members of the working groups, will decide on their exact mission and their deliverables and the leadership of each group. You know, you guys will elect a leader for chair and co-chair, or however you want to structure it. And the exact mission and deliverables will be up to you. So what the descriptions that we have are currently guidelines, but everybody has a good brain, and we need all of us to figure out what exactly we want to do. So are there any questions on this? Okay, that's all I want to say. Please look for an email coming later today and or maybe tomorrow. And thank you very much. Jackie, that's all I have.
All right, great. Well, thanks again for everybody. And again, thank you, Allyson. This has been great to see what's going on at FAIRsharing, and having Susanna in the chat, just keeping on top of everything, is also been really helpful. So I'm looking forward to more collaboration with you and going forward as we kind of really work on trying to make FAIR data fair. I mean, so it's just one of those things where I'm learning more. There's many things I'm learning about FAIR data that I wish I knew when I was younger as a graduate student. So it's just one of those things where I'm loving everything I'm learning, and I'm trying to teach as many people as I can that it just makes things a whole lot easier. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all. Hopefully you'll check your emails for the emails that you'll get from Darwin about the working groups, and have a good week, and we'll all see you next month. Thank you again for everything. Bye.